Wow, we've hit a big turning point here, guys. For a lot of people in crypto and in Cardano, their worst fears just came true. TradFi is swooping in on crypto in droves, and even in Cardano, will never be the same. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the swooping, all the additional TradFi institutions that have now entered the arena, some interesting additional commentary circulating around BlackRock, what this will all mean for Cardano, and even some turtle news. If you feel like this terrified guy could probably be doing a better job fighting off these 5 or 6 eagles, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Okay, here's what we're looking at. The swooping isn't just a couple of TradFi institutions. It's not just BlackRock and Fidelity. We've got a whole bunch. They're coming in droves into crypto. This post says, I'm sorry, but after watching BlackRock, Fidelity, Citadel, Schwab, and now Deutsche Bank all apply for Bitcoin ETF, spot exchanges, etc., only a few days after the SEC drops a TRO on Binance and sues Coinbase, how can't you think this entire past year was a giant inside job coordinated between the Wall Street parasites and government regulators so they could catch up? But what's interesting is this is not even a complete list. We've also got Wisdom Tree and Invesco. This post says in the past 48 hours, the following TradFi firms have jumped into crypto with both feet. This poster responded, it's almost like it was coordinated and almost like all of them bought the dip. To which everyone in crypto pretty much said, of course. This is the kind of thing we've suspected for a long time. A lot of us in crypto have been predicting that exactly this kind of thing would happen. And the reason why this was so predictable is because it doesn't even have to involve any kind of conspiracy. It doesn't have to involve a dark, shadowy cabal. It could be that too. I wasn't there, so I don't know. I know some of you objected when I said that it doesn't have to require a dark, shadowy cabal that you actually believe. It is definitely a dark, shadowy cabal of evilness doing this to us. And I wasn't there, so I won't tell you it wasn't that. It could have easily been that, but it doesn't even require any kind of conspiracy for this to happen. This could all just be happening organically. This is TradFi we're talking about. They're going to swoop in and make money wherever there's money to be made. All they had to do was see what the SEC was doing. And the second the SEC did what they did, sue Kraken, sue Binance, sue Coinbase, name all of these tokens, all of these coins as securities incidentally in the lawsuit. The second the SEC did that, very easy for them to just turn around and organically say, okay, great. Let's swoop in. Now is the time to swoop. There's going to be money to be made here. The markets are going to dip. Let's just buy. Let's do what we always do. Let's buy low and then create products that we can sell back to retail or to other intermediaries or whoever. They don't care at all. They don't care at all. As long as there's money be made and they won't go to jail. I mean, we know that TradFi institutions, and I'm not talking specifically about the ones on the screen, but TradFi institutions, they've been fined in the past. They're not even scared of getting fined for, bending or completely breaking the rules. We've seen traditional finance institutions get fined unbelievable amounts, and they don't care because they're still going to make so much money. I mean, they'd probably prefer not to get fined, but getting fined is not really a big problem. Federal regulators fine traditional finance institutions all the time, and it's just part of the cost of doing business. So they don't even care about that. As long as they're not going to go to jail, they're going to make money wherever there's money to be made. So it doesn't even require a dark, shadowy cabal. I mean, you could imagine that Gary Gensler is, meeting with, people at all of these institutions in some, smoky cigar lounge somewhere in New York or DC if you want to. And I'm like I said, I wasn't there, so I don't know I don't know. I can't say that didn't happen, but the reason why this was so predictable is that it doesn't even require that. These institutions are going to make money where there's money to be made. And the second they saw the native crypto players getting attacked by Gary Gensler and the SEC, pretty easy decision for them to jump in and file applications of their own, for things like spot Bitcoin ETFs. I think the filing of these lawsuits and the coins that were named in these lawsuits probably just gave them even greater assurance that they could go ahead and try to make some money off cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin because Bitcoin wasn't named. Let's skip to the important part. What does this all mean for Cardano? There are a few things to talk about here. One of them is I hope it's obvious to everyone that TradFi is going to take over some significant part of the crypto markets. No one really knows. I mean, is this going to be 90%? Is it going to be 10%, 40%? You can come to your own judgments about what percentage of the crypto market they're going to be able to take over. But certainly it's going to be some significant percentage. We have left this era when it's just Kraken, Coinbase, Binance, and a bunch of small crypto native entities sort of doing all the intermediary stuff in crypto, at least as far as centralized exchanges go. That era is over. TradFi is going to come in and they are going to get their pound of flesh out of crypto. I think that's going to be the case no matter what. That's going to happen. The other thing is we don't know how much of the Operation Choke Point 2.0 stuff is going to stand. So the White House has an election they have to deal with a year from November, and they've got Father Time as their incumbent candidate. My dude is tripping over everything lately. He is tripping over physical objects. He's tripping over words. What I'm trying to say is he's not getting any younger. The perception of youthfulness is not increasing. This guy is going to be a year older, a year from November. He's not getting any younger. You couple that with a policy direction in terms of crypto that paints a very anti-technology picture. And this isn't good for certain demographics they are going to want to be courting in that election a year from November. So it's very possible the White House could turn around and say, this election might be a problem. We need every advantage we can get. And if Father Time looks like he's also very anti-technology and a technology that's kind of beloved by some younger demographics, they might decide that's a bad thing and they need to change direction. This wouldn't be surprising at all. I mean, this happens all the time in politics kind of around the world. I mean, administrations, when it comes time for an election, they are willing to change a lot of things if they think it might make the difference between them losing an election or winning an election. And we've already heard these rumblings about the possible replacement of characters like Janet Yellen and Gary Gensler. And in Janet Yellen's case, Secretary of the Treasury, we could say that might be for a number of different reasons. And we've also mentioned that Gary Gensler, the rumor is that he definitely has this grand ambition of being Secretary of Treasury. And it might make sense for the Biden administration to move Gensler from that SEC spot up to that Secretary of Treasury spot. Maybe that was all some kind of prearranged deal. No one really knows. But then that would free them up to put someone else in as chair of the SEC, and they could announce a new policy direction. Or maybe they don't announce anything, but it just becomes apparent that they're going in a different direction with their crypto regulation. That could easily happen, or none of that could happen. They could just continue on litigating these cases, filing new complaints, doing exactly what they've done in the case of Ripple, which has taken years to litigate. But that's the important thing. The SEC has to litigate these cases. There are two other branches in the U.S. federal government beyond the executive. We've got the legislative and the judiciary, and they've got to go before the judicial branch when they do things like sue Coinbase, sue Binance. And this article from The Block talks about something important that's going to come up in these cases. These cases are going to be a giant circus all on their own. We'll be watching these, probably for years. We'll be watching what goes down here. Unless, the Biden administration puts somebody new in as chair of the SEC and they suddenly decide to drop all these cases because they're so worried about the election. I mean, anything's possible here. But, very likely we're watching these cases for years. And this article delves into something interesting. Thank you to Chris O for pointing this article out to everybody, by the way. So Coinbase is going to hire very, very good lawyers. Binance as well. They're going to hire the best attorneys. And they're going to argue everything. They're going to argue about the Howey test is applied to all of the coins that the SEC mentioned, all of their own activities, all the exchanges activities, all of these things. One of the big things they're going to be arguing about is whether or not the SEC can even regulate crypto. Do they need the authority of Congress to regulate crypto? We've talked in the past about certain quotes where even Gary Gensler himself was saying he needed authority from Congress to regulate crypto. And then now all of a sudden we find him regulating crypto, very obviously. But as they go before the federal courts, they're going to have to argue over issues like major questions doctrine versus Chevron doctrine. This has to do with how much deference the court has to give to the agency's, any agency's version of the world. In this case, the SEC, obviously, because they filed this complaint, they're taking the viewpoint that they don't need Congress's express authority to regulate crypto. And the courts are going to have to decide how much deference to give to that opinion. There is a certain line of case law that says they should give them a certain amount of deference. Historically, the Chevron doctrine, a fairly differential approach to agency actions, provided a framework for courts to grant agencies broad discretion. However, the major questions doctrine, seen as a competing doctrine, has gained traction among conservative and libertarian-minded judges. It argues that if an agency seeks to regulate a matter without specific authorization from Congress, especially if it involves national, economic, or political importance, it must first obtain explicit approval from Congress. So if it's a major question, then they would have to go back to Congress to get express authority. And that is something that Gary Gensler and the SEC do not have right now. So all of these issues are going to get argued. It's going to be very interesting, but there are some issues that are existential to the SEC's version of the world, that it can just go after crypto without the express authority of Congress. And that could all collapse into one frame. All of these issues could collapse into one frame if the White House decides to change direction, or if at some point over the coming years, the courts decide that this is all nonsense and they're going to take more of a major questions doctrine view of the SEC's, sort of self-implied authority to regulate crypto. So back to our most important question. What does this all mean for Cardano? I know we said we were going to talk about Cardano and we talked about everything but Cardano. That was all necessary context so we could get to this part. Here's a post from our friend at the AOL. These are the crypto rankings TradFi institutions will find on the only app that really matters to them, the Bloomberg Terminal. Cardano is in 5th. No stable coins or staked ETH removes the noise. Good luck stopping them from buying ADA. I think all of us will agree this certainly probably is the case. I mean, this is how these TradFi institutions are going to view the world of crypto. What is in the Bloomberg terminal that they can make money on? And you see what we've got is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, XRP, and Cardano. So if we go down this list, I mean, Binance and XRP are currently in litigation with the SEC. Ethereum, we've got, the Ethereum people feel good about their status as a security or not, but I think the Ripple people have a lot of questions. The people who are very closely following the Ripple litigation, they know about the Hinman speech and the Hinman docs, and the Hinman deposition and any relationship or non-relationship with consensus. There's a lot of questions here. I think a lot of people in following that Ripple litigation might take a different view of Ethereum's status than a lot of people within the Ethereum ecosystem would. With Bitcoin, we've talked as recently as yesterday about the actual lack of decentralization in Bitcoin. But of course, that's not the way the traditional finance world certainly views the regulatory status of Bitcoin, because they've heard all the comments from people like Gary Gensler and other people at the SEC, or previously at the SEC, and they definitely view Bitcoin as the least risky, which is why we see the filing of applications for all these Bitcoin spot ETFs. It's seen as the least risky, and it's obviously the biggest market. It's the biggest market cap of any crypto asset, and that's been the case forever since the advent of crypto, because it was the first crypto asset. But even if we get past Bitcoin and Ethereum, you've got two coins that are inextricably tied to ecosystems that are currently in litigation with the SEC. Then you've got Cardano, and Cardano has this tremendously, seemingly positive ace up its sleeve. Cardano is one of the few large cap ecosystems that had the foresight to execute its ICO in a place like Japan under Japanese law, with, as near as everybody can tell, 0 US buyers. And the status of those buyers, it's not like people are guessing. They documented everything very well because it was all done under Japanese law, and as near as I could tell, there were no US buyers. That is something very unique that Cardano has going for it, and it would seem to be very relevant if TradFi adoption is going to be something we're going to care about. We've already said it seems to be the case that TradFi is going to take over a significant part of the crypto markets. You can argue with each other about whether that's 10% or 90% or 50%, but it's going to be a significant portion. And we already know TradFi institutions are going to care about the status of these assets as securities or not. And you've got a lot of assets that just did straight up ICOs involving US buyers. That is a different category of activity than Cardano doing an ICO in Japan with 0 US buyers. This is a very different category of activities, regardless of what the SEC currently thinks. But, the SEC is a party in litigation. They're going to make claims, even if even if they think their claims are weak, they're still going to make that claim if it gives them some kind of leverage, some kind of a foothold to argue from, even as a negotiating chip. They might make certain arguments that they think are weak. And certainly, the SEC probably knows about the Cardano ICO happening outside the US with no US buyers. So they know with Cardano, they've got to start making arguments about the secondary markets, which is something very different than this is something very different they would have to do with Cardano that they don't have to do with a lot of other cryptocurrency ecosystems, where they threw caution to the wind and they just did straight up ICOs inside the US with US buyers. So Cardano has got this seemingly tremendously positive ace up its sleeves if TradFi adoption is something we're going to need to care about. And it definitely looks like we are. And I think we've all kind of secretly known this for a long time, that eventually TradFi was going to swoop in like a bunch of eagles attacking crypto as it stood on the side of this cliff. We all knew this was going to happen eventually. And let's face it, that's why Cardano didn't do an ICO inside the US. They probably could have made a huge amount of money if they just done a straight up ICO, just like Ethereum did, just like a lot of other ecosystems did. If they just did that straight up ICO in the US, they probably would have made a lot more money, and they probably would have been able to stretch it a lot further, in their initial days of development. They didn't do that because they predicted that eventually crypto would have to confront this future that we're living today in June of 2023. By the way, don't get me wrong. I am not excited for what some of these TradFi institutions are going to bring to crypto. I think this post kind of sums up the sentiment of a lot of us. BlackRock's new Bitcoin trust is half good and half terrible. It's imperative that every Bitcoiner know what they've created and why it's a threat to Bitcoin's values. As an investment vehicle, this is the BlackRock Bitcoin Trust. They show a round wheel on a bicycle as the grantor trust model, and a square wheel as the custody and governance sort of aspect of this BlackRock Bitcoin product. And now we're talking about Bitcoin, but someday soon we're going to be talking about Cardano in the context of these entities. Speaking of some of these TradFi entities, this video is definitely making the rounds on crypto Twitter today. It's actually an unlisted video, but you can find the actual link to the whole video down in the description box where it says Reddit companion thread. If you click in there, you're going to find the link to this actual video. So this video comes from it looks like O'KeefeMediaGroup.com, and I believe we've talked about maybe some of their previous videos in the past. This video kind of fits that same format where it looks like they've sent a woman in to sort of pretend to be on a date with a person they want to get on video saying certain things, and then presumably she sort of leads the conversation in the direction she wants, and then she's got a secret camera. They're saying that this guy is a recruiter for BlackRock. So this is important context. This guy is talking about a lot of different things, and it's all the kinds of things that people in crypto sort of already think about an institution like BlackRock. He's talking about how financial institutions buy off politicians. He's saying that a senator only costs like 10K USD, which seems pretty low to me. That seems pretty low. It seems like some of these senators have made such good stock trades that 10K would not be enough. But who knows? Maybe that's just sort of his. According to him, maybe that's just the cheapest senator. We don't know. Who knows if any of what this guy's saying is actually true? Maybe it is. Maybe he's just spinning some yarns because he's on a date with a woman who's much more attractive than his average date. In any case, you'll probably find this video pretty entertaining if you're a part of the segment of crypto that already thinks these things about BlackRock. Finally, while BlackRock is apparently off dominating the world, here's what Cardano's up to. At least the CEO of IOG, Charles Hoskinson, posted this. When in the fish markets, I noticed some sea turtles that were still alive and weak, so I bought them and released them in the sea. I have a soft spot for turtles. When I was a kid in Hawaii, I used to chase them while snorkeling. Here's a picture of the turtles turned upside down, I guess so they won't escape. And there you can see after Charles released them, at least one of them is happily swimming away. This one over here is kind of swimming sideways, but I'm assuming he eventually made it out to sea. I'm sure the fishermen were kind of just watching in the background, plotting how they would go recapture the turtles. But, I personally am hoping they actually escaped and will never be caught again. Who knows? At worst case scenario, Charles at least bought them, maybe an additional day, some more hours before they're recaptured. Again, I'm hoping they actually escaped and they won't be recaptured. But in any case, I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.